Hey, witches!
Hi, hello, welcome back to another episode of Cryptids.
Yes, what an interesting episode it will be. I feel
For
like it's
real.
gonna end up being a Emily heavy episode just because of what we chose. Maybe not, because you chose a very specific type of vampire, so maybe not. But I chose a Will-o-the-Wisp, which I know a lot of our listeners are not in America, but as an American, until like really looking into Will-o-the-Wisps, you see them as like these helpful little light creatures that are
Thanks, Disney.
leading you towards good things. Um,
Disney.
a lot of our pop culture is like that actually. I have quite a few pop culture references of Will-o-the-Wisps at the end. Um,
Sorry.
but this one is also one of the cryptids or like folklore creatures that has been explained by science. Um, so on Webster Dictionary's website, it says the will-o'-the-wisp is a flame-like phosphorescence caused by gases from decaying plants in marshy areas. That's the science. Well, a very simple overview of the science. I'll go more into detail on that later. But this used to be Will with the Wisp, who was a sprite or a type of spirit who carried a fleeting wisp of light, and travelers would try to follow the light and were led astray into the marsh. Um, and then it's also referred to as ignis fatuus a lot, which means foolish fire in Latin. And that meaning was eventually like extended or expanded to include basically anything that was deemed impractical or unattainable. But in Scottish folklore, we're going to go through a couple different types, but in Scottish folklore, will-o'-the-wisps are usually mischievous spirits, or fairies. Sometimes they're even described as the ghosts of the dead that are eager to lead travelers off their path and to their death. So they're not necessarily these happy little helper lights that we tend to think of them as, thanks to Disney. They appear as balls of light, sometimes so bright that they hurt your eyes, and other times so dim that you have to squint to see them. And they usually have a bluish gleam, although some people have said that they've seen red wisps. And the
I feel like
reason that
that
this,
is terrifying.
right? And the reason that they're typically, or the reason that the science has been able to explain what they probably actually are, or where this lore probably came from, is because they typically appear close to a bog, marsh, or swamp, or which are all places where straying off the beaten path can be deadly. There are a few myths, though, one being the one portrayed in the Disney or Pixar film, where if you're brave enough to follow the light, then it will take you to a treasure or to something that you need. Oh my goodness. See, life, it's been beating me up. Now I'm tired. Some people believe that the spirits or the will-o'-the-wisps were souls that could not enter heaven or hell, and they were forced to wander the earth forever. People that believe that are probably those people that didn't read the Bible very well, because that's not how it works, but it's fine. Others think that the devil himself was behind them, instructing spirits in hell to return to earth with the sole purpose of leading others astray. Some believe it's like kind of like a banshee, like an omen of death or tragedy. In Sweden, the will-o'-the-wisp is a manifestation of an unbaptized soul who tries to lead travelers into bodies of water in hopes of being baptized. So aside from being like pretty and like making people want to follow them, they can also be, or they're also considered powerful omens because they appear to be able to predict the future, either appearing to people before their deaths or flocking to the site of a tragedy before it takes place, or revealing the place where a thief or a fairy has buried golden treasure. Now, we all know me, and we know that I can make anything into a Harry Potter reference. So I'm going to say that Miss Hermione Granger would say that they are not omens of death. They are the cause of death. Because if you follow them into the swamp and then die by getting eaten by an alligator, it's because you followed it, not because it was there. You dumb motherfucker. Anyway. Some various stories about the will-o'-the-wisps. The classic one is a lantern carried by, excuse me, a blacksmith named Will. He was a big troublemaker, and he died, and he went to heaven to the gates and was sent back by St. Peter, who told him to reform during his second life. But during his second life, he was an even worse person. So the devil was like super impressed by how shitty of a person he was. And St. Peter cursed him to roam the earth forever in spirit form. And when the devil was like so impressed with him, he gave him a piece of coal to warm himself on the cold earth nights. And instead, Will used that coal to make a torch and lure innocent travelers into dangers. So like shitty human soul all the way around.
So it's like an anglerfish.
Right. Another version of this is actually one of the like not origin stories but like backstories to the jack-o'-lantern. Jack was a drunk and he sold his soul to the devil so that the devil would pay off his bar tab. And when the devil returned to collect Jack's soul, the man tricked him into climbing a tree and drew a cross under the tree, trapping the devil in its branches. Later, Jack dies and is rejected from heaven because, you know, not a great person. So he had to beg the devil to give him a place in hell. And the devil was like, no. And he gave him a little bitty flame for light to keep to help him wander the earth for eternity. And Jack carved a turnip and put the light in it and used it as a lantern, hence the term jack-o'-lantern. In Asia, they have and I'm probably going to pronounce these wrong because I don't know where in Asia, so I don't know. The first one is the Alea, and the second one is the Chirbati, which I'm pretty sure that one I'm pronouncing correctly, but I'm not positive. And these are like wisp lights that are used by the dead souls to mark the place where they died. In Australia, they call them Min lights, and they follow travelers once they are spotted. So the light will follow the traveler around, and if the traveler turns around and tries to follow the light, they will never be seen again. Like the traveler will never be seen again. So this is why I said, do not follow the light.
Don't do it.
Yeah. In South America, they have the luz mala, which literally means bad light, and the candeleja, which I don't know what that means, but
I think that means like candelabra kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense. And these are evil spirits who carry their ghost lights around after death. In the United States, I mean, we have some of the legends of Will-o'-the-Wisp, but we also have ghost hunters, and ghost hunters like to take photos where they capture orbs or that are like balls of colored lights. And they believe that that reveals the presence of a dead soul in the room. That's one
Ghost hunting is so
version
fun.
of it in the United States. And then in the other one in Louisiana, a phantom light called, and I'm sure this is French, so I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but feu follet
Definitely French.
represents dark. Yeah, represents dark souls who have been sent back from heaven to do penance on earth. So a lot of these are like negative. Now, to dig a little deeper into the science. So all of the things make sense with the science, that this is probably where these myths came from, is this science. There are some that are like, or the very simple version is that the oxidation of methane, diphosphane, and phosphine, when they mix, they spontaneously combust. And these are the result of dead or decaying plant matter. To get a little more in detail, in marshes or swamps, things like that, the plant often seeks underwater before it can decompose. And while under the water, all of these decomposition things happen, releasing the methane, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and phosphines into the air or water, and then they bubble up into the air. And when they hit the oxygen, they spontaneously combust. And being that it's methane, it probably would be a blue tinted light. So that's probably where the wisps came from and why they disappear when you try to follow them. So, pop culture. There's quite a few, and I'm sure that I have not encompassed all of them, but I have a few that I'm going to go through. One we kind of already discussed. In Pixar's Brave, Merida follows the will-o-the-wisp to the witch's cottage where she receives a spell and like supposed to make her relationship with her mother better and all this stuff. But the will-o-the-wisps are just in the beginning, basically. They're in Harry Potter, in Prisoner of Azkaban, during Professor Lupin's Defense Against the Dark Arts class. They learn about hinky-pucks, which are small goblin-like creatures that carry a lantern, or that have like a kind of like an anglerfish. They have like a appendage that it has a light on the end, and lure travelers into a bog. Marvel Comics actually has a villain called Will-o-the-Wisp. He's also known as Dr. Jackson Arvad. He's a physicist and a supervillain who can control the electromagnetic attraction between his molecules, allowing him to change his density. While I was doing research for this, wife happened to walk in here and she gave me another one. In Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Willow conjures Will-o-the-Wisps. And she's following them to try to find Oz, but I think at this point she's Dark Willow. I'm not positive though, so Brittany's probably gonna be like screaming at it, like no. But she can't decide what she really wants, so the wisps like turn against her and start like flying at her and hitting her. In the book Paradise Lost, or the books Paradise Lost, I've never read these, so I'm not sure. The will-o-the-wisp is the way they describe like a hope or a goal that's impossible to reach. In book 9 of Paradise Lost, Satan is compared to a will-o-the-wisp when he leads Eve to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So, in Dracula, the book, in the first chapter, the Count is masquerading, meaning Dracula, is masquerading as a coach driver taking Jonathan Harker to his castle in the night. Harker asks Dracula about the lights that are like floating around, and the Count makes a reference to a common folk belief about the phenomenon, saying that they mark where treasure is buried. And the last folklore that I have written down is in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Will-o'-the-Wisps are present in the dead marshes outside of Mordor. When Frodo and Sam make their they're going through the bogs, Gollum tells them not to follow the Will-o'-the-Wisps. He tells them that if they do, they will keep the dead company and have little candles of their own. So only in like a couple of these pop culture references is the Will-o'-the-Wisp a good thing. But for some reason, I feel in America we think that they're always a good thing. So there must be
I feel like
other.
I feel like everything in America is so bad that we just make everything so good because that's all we can look
Right?
forward to.
Right? We're like, oh god, that sounds terrible. Like, like The Little Mermaid. Like, that's a terribly tragic story. But Disney was like, ta-da! Cinderella.
We're
Like,
gonna
all
make
of the
it a
fairy
happily
tales.
ever after. Yeah. If anyone has ever read the Grimm fairy tales, they are so good. There's actually one Grimm fairy
They're
tale
great.
that yeah, for real. Um, there is one Grimm fairy tale that I never once knew about. I knew all the other ones just because of the like Disney world, but there is one that had to do with cannibalism, and I didn't know about that.
Oh my.
It's like the something daughter or something like that, or the something bride daughter, the groom's bride daughter, I think. I don't know, but fairy tale. What is it? The robber bridegroom. That's what it's called. It's called the robber bridegroom. And in college, as an elective, I decided to take an acting class, and we did fairy tales, and we did the robber bridegroom. And the robber bridegroom, I played the bride, and this very dark, sinister guy wanted to take me as his bride, and he told me to come visit him one Sunday afternoon out in the woods in his little cottage, and I was like, okay, here I come, because I had to. Um, and when I got there, there was a little bird that tells, and the whole point of the exercise is we had to tell the story in as minimal lines. We could repeat lines as we needed, but we could only tell like specific. We only had 12 lines in the entire fairy tale to choose from to tell the story.
Okay.
So it was difficult. But basically, we get there, and there's an old lady there that like cooks them food, and she tells me that they take the brides, they kill the brides, they eat the brides, and then they repeat. And the most handsome of them all is the one who's supposed to be my bride groom,
Oh my.
my dude. And they're there, and they're completely fucking wasted, and so then I escape, and I out them in front of every single person, in front of the entire town. And I
Okay.
forget what happens after that. They die, or they're imprisoned or something like that. Either way, my character lived. I didn't die, and I was not eaten by them. But yeah, it's kind of weird. I was like, ooh, they didn't talk about this one, but it was pretty cool. So, but yeah, the Grimm brothers fairy tales. The Grimm Bros knew what's up.
And also Hans Christian
Anyways,
Andersen, because that's who wrote Little
oh
Mermaid.
yeah, I love the theory though that he might actually have been gay or like bi of some sort, and like loving somebody from afar and like knowing they can't have it, and that he
And
like wrote
that's
the
why he
story
wrote
after that.
like these tragedies.
The Little Mermaid. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, I love that. There's another buddy. Oh, the Bram Stoker, Bram Stoker. Somebody
Yeah.
said that he was either gay or bi or something along those lines too, and that's why he wrote Dracula as a very like pining after the male character.
Hmm.
So I was like, that's pretty dope. But anyways,
Interesting.
speaking of vampires,
Good
I'm talking
segue.
I'm talking about vampires. Okay, specifically Strigoi. Um, now there, I feel like Strigoi are very typical vampires.
Yeah, like
I
what you
f-
would think of.
I don't I don't think there's any
They're
difference
not
to
Twilight.
yeah, no. When I talk vampires, I'm not Twilight is out of here. But like the very typical vampire type of thing is what I'm thinking of. So Strigoi come from Romanian mythology, and they are technically troubled spirits that are said to have risen from the grave. And there's actually some like areas in those more ancient cemeteries that actually have like covers and grates over the coffins to prevent the dead from rising. Not necessarily to say that there's going to be a zombie apocalypse or anything like that, but there was a vampire kind of outbreak or like a fear that was happening. So they automatically did this to prevent it from happening because they were
Which is
afraid.
hilarious.
Until it happens to you, Brandy.
You know what's terrifying? The fact that they
Hmm.
used to literally like tie a string around a person's finger and string it up to a bell on the like um
Oh, in case they were alive, so
in
they
case
could
they
like
were
lure
buried
them.
alive.
Yeah,
What the fuck?
yeah,
Like
insane.
how many times did that happen before that became the thing to do?
How did they know? It's so sad thing.
Well, I feel like they did a lot of grave robbing in those days
True.
because they like buried themselves with
Money.
things. Just weird.
Um, now they put them in a vault. You can't necessarily do that. I mean, you could try to grave rob all you want, but you can't. You have to get through the vault. But anyways, so they are known to be troubled spirits that are said to have risen from the grave. They have the ability to transform into an animal, become invisible, and to gain vitality from the blood of their victims. So Bram Stoker's Dracula could be considered a modern interpretation of the Strigoi through their historic links with vampirism. But so the Romanian word that originated from a root related to the Latin terms strix or striga, with the addition of the augmentative suffix oi or oie for strigoi or strigoie for the feminine version of it, is where like the word comes from. Um, and it actually has related terms like moroi and basaroi. It's more that's more like the Hungarian, borrowed from the Hungarian forms. They are considered the parallel derivative. They are considered uh, related or similar membership in the same mythological microsystem. I did not realize that they actually had that kind of system. But for avid readers and for anybody who has actually read the series, but they actually have, God, Jesus. Of course, when I start talking, I'm going to start hiccuping. Um, so they actually have Moroi and Strigoi in the book series, The Vampire Academy.
Hmm.
Dampier is also in it as well. Dampier is more of the vampire humanoid version. Strigoi is when you do something evil or you do something specific evil. Moroi is like the true vampire form. Good book series, terrible movie. Don't watch the movie.
Don't watch the movie.
I don't know. I haven't.
Um,
I'm not watching the TV show, so I'm not
I
giving my
haven't
critique on that.
either. But
And I probably will not.
the
But
spin-off series Bloodlines is also fabulous. Bloodline?
yeah, is
I
it
don't know where it's
Bloodlines?
at, but the blood something.
I thought Bloodlines was a different. But yes,
I
that
will look
follows
it up.
Sydney, right? The character
Yes,
Sydney.
and she's an
But yeah, that's a
alchemist.
good series as well. Yeah. But those are some good series. It's not necessarily straight from
It is
Romanian.
Bloodlines.
Oh, it is cool. It's not straight from like accurate, but it's very similar. You know, things. And it's like based out of like Romania area. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where it is. Striga is Romanian for to scream, and in the let's see, where was it? It's the root has been related particularly to owls because they scream a lot. I don't know. I don't know. And then the Venetian word striga also means witch. The Italian has a parallel to it, means sorcerer. In French, it means a bird woman who sucks the blood of children. And Jules
Oh,
Verne actually wrote about it in chapter 2 of his novel, The Castle of the Carpathians. Um, the Greek, Polish, Hungarian, and Albanian also have similar variations of the word. Um, in the late Roman period, the word became associated with witches or a type of ill omened nocturnal flying creature. So it referred to a nighttime entity that craved human flesh and blood, particularly infants. Which is weird because like I feel like I played a Greek game or a game that like came around like the Greek time, and I actually heard the word striga, and I was like, or like strix or whatever, and I was like, huh?
yeah, what?
That's weird. But anyway, so here's some history on it. So there has actually been as early reports of Strigoi um, since 15th century ish. So about 1500 to 1600, there was a story of, I'm not saying that, Jur Grando Alovic. He is from the region of Istria. He is the villager, is believed to have been the first real person described as a vampire because he was referred to as a strigoi, strigan, or strigun in contemporary local records. He is supposed to have terrorized his former village 16 years after his death. Eventually, he was decapitated by the local priest and villagers. The Carniolan, Carniolan, that's a
Carnelian?
science.
I don't know.
It's it's not spelled like that. I don't know. Scientist Johann Weikard von Valvassar wrote about this villager's life and afterlife in his extensive work, The Glory of the. Why are people using this word? This word was used in Iron Flame, and I don't know what it is or how to pronounce it. But to me, it spells douchey. It's Duchy, and to me, that
Isn't
spells
it
douchey.
Duchy?
I don't know.
Duchy.
It is. I'm just reading away douchey.
Oh, Emily.
Listen, I know words. I don't know a lot of words. What does that even mean?
I can't talk. There's a lot of words that I don't actually know how to pronounce. I know what the word is and I know what it means, but I don't actually know how to pronounce it.
It's like Duchess. It's the territory of a
Yeah.
duke. It's a dukedom.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Duke Nukem. Anyways. Well, that makes a lot more sense for the Iron Flame part of it. Face is all red now. Duchy.
She's gonna be all right, I promise.
No, I'm not. I need sleep. The glory of the what is it? Duce?
Duchy.
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 The glory of the Duchy of Carniola when he visited Kringa during his travels. This was the first written document on vampires. Grando, the villager, was also mentioned in other writings back in 1800. And that story was much more elaborate with more fantastic details to make the story more interesting and sensational. Um, in modern times, the Croatian writer Boris Peric has researched the legend and written a book, The Vampire, on the story. So if you would like to read more on that story, the original vampire and all of that kind of stuff, the story, The Vampire, is available for you. In modern times, when it says modern times, I don't know how early modern times means, like
Right, like when is that just like
2000s, like
AD?
early 1900s, like what do you mean modern times? Um, anyways, uh, so, Strigo are mentioned in Descripto Moldave, which is by a Moldavian statesman and soldier. He thought Striga was mostly Moldavian and Transylvanian beliefs, but he associated them with witches and warlocks rather than blood drinking undead vampires. The book mentions dunking, a traditional test for witchcraft, as a method of identifying a Striga, which is actually there's I think it's a duchess, maybe, I don't know. There's somebody, like, she was a very 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 cruel person, and she ended up like killing a bunch of women around the area to bathe in
Yes.
their.
Oh my god, what is her name?
I think they believed her to be like a vampire of some sort. Wasn't she mentioned in?
Bathory. Elizabeth Bathory.
Yeah, Elizabeth Bathory. I think not that they thought of her being a vampire, but they thought of her like being like the undead kind of
Yeah,
person.
she like thought that if she bathed in the blood that she would stay young forever. So like similar,
Yeah,
but she didn't drink it. She
yeah,
like bathed in
that
it.
we know of.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Documents say she bathed in it, but we don't know.
Yeah.
So there's other articles out there that say that strigoi are specifically nocturnal animals that prey on infants only. Uh, he reports a tradition in which, upon the birth of a child, one tosses a stone behind oneself and exclaims, "This into the mouth of the strigoi." So when you have a baby, you toss a stone over your shoulder and you say that, and it's supposed to ward off all strigoi because like its mouth is full, I guess. Um,
It broke its
I
teeth.
don't know. Yeah, some. Um, there is in 1909, somebody by the name of Franz Hartmann mentioned in his book an authenticated vampire story that peasant children from a village in the Carpathian Mountains started to die mysteriously. The villagers began to suspect a recently deceased count was a vampire dwelling in his old fortress. Frightened villagers burned the castle to stop the deaths. It's not mentioned if that actually did stop the deaths or not, but it was a concern back in 1909. So even, and it's really crazy, like And this goes for anywhere that doesn't have like modern mainstream media, whether that's newspapers or like modern time newspapers, social media, all that kind of stuff. It's crazy what it's like to be in an area that has a small social area versus a big social area, because then you got like more word of mouth, more little word of mouth. And it's just crazy what people believe up here versus what people believe down here. So like they thought a dead count was like eating their children. Was it true? No one knows. But they burnt down the castle, which could have been cool to visit as a like from a history perspective, in 1909. No one fucking knows. Um, but the yeah, so there's that. The communist era, there has been reports of vampires there too. Um, there was an event in 1969 in the city of, oh, what the hell kind of name is that? What's a Romanian name? It's got a lot of character things on letters I don't know.
Give it your best shot.
Kapataneni, but every single A has a letter on it, or has a thing on it, and then the T's got a thing on it. I don't know. Um, So, in this city in 1969, after the death of an old man, several family members began to die in suspicious circumstances. The corpse, after it was unearthed, did not show signs of decomposition. His eyes were wide open and his face was red and twisted. The corpse was burned to save his soul. During the Romanian Revolution of 1989, the corpse of Nicolae, don't know his last name, Sasausu, Sakusu, something, did not receive a proper burial. This made the ghost of the former dictator a threat in the minds of the superstitious Romanians. So, a revolutionary activist, Gelu Voikin, carpeted the apartment of the conductator with braids of garlic. This is a traditional remedy against the Strigoi. And in as early as 2004, a woman from the village in of Marotanu de Sus in Dolj County claimed that she had been visited by her late uncle, a 76-year-old Romanian man named Petre Toma, who had died in December the previous year. Fearing the deceased might have become a Strigoi, the woman's brother-in-law organized a vampire hunting group made up of several family members. After drinking some alcohol, they dug up the coffin of Peter, made an incision in his chest, and tore the heart out. After removal of the heart, the body was burned and the ashes were mixed in water and drunk by Toma's niece, believing that this would put an end to the haunting. The county police later arrested 6 of the family members who participated in the ritual, charging them with disturbing the peace of the dead. They were sentenced to 6 months imprisonment in order to pay damages to the family of the deceased. Since then, in the nearby village of why is that a different name? Oh, Amarasti, Amarasti de Sus. God, forgive me. People drive a fire-hardened stake through the heart or belly of the dead as a preventative measure,
Oh
so that they
my.
don't upheave them. Yeah. So those are some histories of the more recent Strigois. And did you know that there is a way to be created into the Strigoi?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, there is. Um, so, an encyclopedia, State of Folklorist, published this in their books in 1882, referred to the cases of Strigoism. The Strigoi can be a living man born under uh, these certain circumstances. They must be the 7th child of the same sex in a family.
Oh my.
They must lead a life of sin. They must die without being married. You know, you don't have to do all of these at the same time. You have to be one or the other, I think. You must die by execution for perjury, die by suicide, or die from a witch's curse. The Strigoi are said to be bald on the top of the head, do not eat garlic and onions, avoid incense, and towards the feast of St. Andrew, they sleep outdoors. Their spine is elongated in the shape of a tail covered with hair.
Oh,
That's weird.
all
Yeah.
right.
If
Okay.
there is a drought in a village, it means that there is a strigoi that prevents the rains. If it rains with stones or hail, it means God punishes the strigoi who does not let clean rain fall. If it rains with sun, it is believed that one of the strigoi has been killed. The strigoi take the milk from the cows, take the manna of the wheat, the strength of the people, stop the rains, bring hail, and bring death among men and cattle. On St. George's Day, which is April 23rd, the boys water the girls so that they don't suffer from strigoi, but also so that they don't turn into these creatures. To kill them, the grave of the supposed strigoi is searched, and in order to read to him by the priest in an oak. What? Sorry, I feel like my eyes just like gave up on me for a second. To kill them, the grave of the supposed strigoi is searched, and the order is read to him by the priest in an oak yew or ash branch is struck in his heart, and it is pierced with a nail or a knife to remain bound of the coffin and not by being able to go and do mischief. Yeah.
All right.
So apparently there are 3 different types of strigoi. Somebody by the name of Tudor Pamphile noted in his book that Romania has 3 different types of strigoi. Strigoica, Asa, something, which is a witch. Strigoi view, a living strigoi or a sorcerer, or a strigoi mort, or a dead strigoi, the most dangerous kind because they emerge from their graves in order to torment their families until their relatives die.
As one does.
Right? They tortured you while you were living. You might as well torture them until they die.
Exactly. Exactly. You know who you are, and I'm coming for you.
Right? And then lastly, the prevention and protection of oneself from the strigoi. So, a common way used to identify a vampire was to place a 7-year-old boy dressed in white on a white horse near the graveyard at midday. It was believed that the horse would stop at the grave of the suspected vampire. In 1887, a French geographer details burials in Romania as if the deceased has red hair, he is very concerned that he was back in the form of a dog, frog, flea, or bedbug, and that it enters into houses at night to suck the blood of beautiful young girls.
Oh,
So it
bitch, I'm
is
gonna be a bed
prudent.
bug. I'm coming
So
back as
it
a
is
bed bug.
so it is prudent to nail the coffin heavily, or better yet, a stake through the chest of the corpse. What the fuck? Um, Someone in 1892 describes another preventative method by unearthing and beheading, then entering the corpse and head face down. And then in 1976, the Dracula scrapbook by Peter Haining, published by the New English Library Editions, reported that the meat of a pig killed on the 17th of October, the feast day of St. Ignatius, was a good way to guard against vampires, according to Romanian legends, even though other Romanian people never said anything like that. But this dude said that was fine.
All
But
right.
that is some earliest reports, all the way up to most recent reports. which is insane that in 2004 this is happening. Kind of where the word comes from and how to protect yourself against them and how they come to be. So,
Nice.
yeah. Yay.
Yay.
Anyways, until next time.
Bye.